season of birth, so the part of the year in which you are born, is relevant for birth quality and also for long-term outcomes. And when we say which are these outcomes, so child health, it's relevant for educational attainment, for labor market outcomes. And here we just list three very recent papers that actually analyze season of birth and these outcomes, how it is related to these outcomes. And actually this is one is also co-authored with Costas, I think, the Crawford, okay. So the interesting thing is that although there is no consensus yet of what is the driving force, so what is the main mechanism behind the fact that the season of birth has such a strong relevance on outcomes, so there is no consensus on the driving force behind, but the effects of season of birth are very clear. So from all these large literature by now, it's very clear that there is a good season of birth and that there is a bad season. So in economics, but also in biology and medical sciences, okay? So I say that there is no consensus, and actually this seems an area where there are more and more papers, and you see all those, for example, are very recent papers. There are like papers that posit that it's more like a selection issue, so different mothers give birth in different points in time, or just due to school entry rules, or whether in winter months that maybe could negatively affect you if you are in Leicester. But from here, let's get to the point that basically season of birth clearly has very clear-cut outcomes, and so this clearly shows that there is a good and a bad season. In particular, for the US, we can say that there is a clear good season, that is basically if you are born in spring and summer months. And the other quarters, we call them the bad months, the winter months, so let's say quarters 1 and 4. So basically good season, according also to this evidence, and for the US is, let's say, being born between April and September, okay? So however, although the effects of good season are very clear, there is basically nothing on the determinants of season of birth. And this is basically what we are planning and we work on here. So basically we want to analyze season of birth as a choice, okay? So not the effects, on this it's already documented, although it's ongoing and more will come, but on the choice of season of birth. So more or less, what are the determinants of the season of birth of a child? So we have in mind, in general, that people make decisions on fertility planning. So there is a decision of fertility planning and also season of birth. Here we will focus on first birth, so the first child. And basically, we could think that people have to choose when to have their child. So basically, do we postpone or not the fertility? But also then in which season do we want to have the child? And as of now, for this part, what we show you today, we basically focus on season of birth as a decision, and we take the age of mother as given. So for now, we think that the decision of whether postponing it or not that is given, we focus on basically season of birth. So what we are actually doing to start investigating like determinants of season of birth, so whether it is actually a choice or not. So we will show correlates of season of birth with the mother's characteristics. We also show correlates of season of birth with child quality at birth, so birth quality. Then we use also the information on gestation weeks that we have for basically all our units of observation to disentangle what we can call the expected from the realized season of birth. Because if we think that season of birth is a choice, then you can choose, but something wrong could happen. So you can shoot for the good season, but then, for example, if your baby is born preterm, she may end up for the bad season, and vice versa. So using the information gestation weeks, if we are after understanding if a season of birth is a choice, we also wanted to disentangle and distinguish, so realized from expected, okay? We will illustrate that out of the mother's attributes that we have available, age seems to be the most important, and then the task will be to try to understand what is behind. So is it preferences and or biological constraints, so a mixture of both. And the ultimate goal, of course, this we are not showing you today because we don't have it yet, but basically the ultimate goal here would be to try to estimate the value of season of birth and also in terms of postponing fertility. So it could be that there is a trade-off. So if I postpone fertility, then this could mean on average that I will have higher earnings. But it could be that if I postpone fertility, this means I will have my child when I am much older, then I may be less able to have a good season birth, and vice versa. So this would be the ultimate goal. Yes?
Do people notice how, average person is aware of this?
No, that's an important question. So although, yes, we could think that the average person doesn't know the production function, I think also, I don't know, if we asked our grandmothers, maybe she would have a sense that, for example, a child born in winter, let's say in a country where there is in winter is cold, she would have a sense that if you could choose, maybe don't have your child born in January, or because winter means more germs, more exposure, so on. So it's true. Here we are not claiming that the average mother knows the production function, but at least since it seems like that the bad months are actually the winter months, we can think that at least you have a sense. There is also the other issue that is still to explore, that in the US, given it's a country where maternity leave is basically non-existent or much less than in Europe, there could also be a sense that the choice of season of birth could be thought of also in terms of trying to avoid, trying to have some more work flexibility. So for example, the fact that in the US also the summer months are popular, that also would have the sense that on average you would think that it's easier to accommodate 1 month of leave if you take your month in July rather than if you go to your employer and you say, in February I disappear. So there is at least a sense that even the average person, the average couple could have a choice, a target. So how do we do it, or we start to do this? So we work mainly with US data, but then we will also show you Spanish data. So we have basically birth certificates, so basically more or less the universe of live births. So what we are going to show you today is basically estimates, reduced form estimates of season of birth and how they correlate with the mother's characteristics. We also have the information of whether the mother smokes during pregnancy and whether use of assisted reproductive technology is reported. Then we will show also correlates between birth quality and season of birth, controlling for these outcomes. And then having in mind this issue that maybe there are 2 types of women, younger and older, and then season of birth could be a choice. This part is not.
Can you use kind of Southern Hemisphere data as well to see if things flip around?
So I think if we just look at the averages, I don't know if we look at the Chile, the season of birth I think is flipped. We could document, at least in the introduction, we could also document. Clearly it's if we went to the Caribbean and so on, where basically there are no seasons, clearly,
Sonia, quick question.
Yes.
Is there any seasonal pattern in planned versus unplanned births? I know you.
No, that's a very interesting point. So the papers that we have seen, the ones we quote earlier, that find this effect of season on outcomes, they claim that there is clearly a pattern with wanted. Okay. I don't know if they say something specific about the one. At least one paper claims that most of the action comes from the wanted. So it seems like exactly there is possibly a choice. So basically, the data set for the US is the National Vital Statistics, data from the National Vital Statistics system. So we virtually have all the birth certificates. And the good thing is that we have, some information on mother's characteristics and very good and detailed data on birth quality. In particular, we have weeks of gestation for basically virtually all the observations. So just to have like a more uniform group where we want to try to start understanding what's going on. So as I said already, we focus on firstborns. And then we focus on firstborns of mothers that are white and non-Hispanic, so to have a uniform groups. We focus on singletons, although we also have twins. I have a table in the appendix, but we clearly want to keep them separate. And then we work with, so these firstborns of mothers that are between 25 and 45. These, we basically excluded the younger ones, at least in our main analysis, to try, we exclude like teenage pregnancies or those who are still completing their schooling. And we work with basically recent.
For these later ages, it might not be choice, no? Because I mean, you are running against the clock, against the fertility clock, so you have it whenever you can. So. Yes,
so that's a part of the issue, at least in the first part, to basically document exactly whether there are differences or not, and that's a very important difference. That's why we are thinking exactly there is a younger and an older group, exactly because of that's key, yes. So just to have an idea, so these are the first descriptive statistics. So we have mother's characteristics, and then we have rich data on the birth quality. So we have age, whether she is legally married versus all the rest. We constructed a dummy for education, some college and above. We know if like the mother was smoking during the pregnancy, whether she used the assisted reproductive technology. This is available only for the final years in our sample. And then, so very good data, we have the birth weight, and in particular, we emphasize the weeks of gestation. If then we want to disentangle the realized from the expected one. And so let's remember, so good season of birth is good means from April to September, so second quarter and third quarter. This is for the US. Here, again, it's still descriptive statistics. Now we focus on singletons, so no multiple births. And we just check the prevalences in terms of good season and bad season. Clearly, they are not, none of them is very far from one half, but we see that there is some difference between young and old. We also just see these are just prevalences by education group, and then by education and age group. But just to say what we mean by young and old, so in our main analysis, young we will consider the group 25 to 39, and old from 40 to 45. And now we will show some more graphs. So here there seems like there are some these are just prevalences in terms of whether it's more likely the good season versus the bad season is more likely or not. So this is just to give an idea of first births for our group of mothers, the prevalences by age. Here, let's talk about the differences by season. So this is differences in percentage points of good season with respect to bad season. So here, it's also not distinguished by education. We are just splitting by young and old. And we can see that there seems to be a pattern in terms of whether younger basically achieve the target of a good season. We can also split it by whether you have some college education or less. Always we see that there is a difference between a younger and older mothers of first birth. So clearly here it seems like it's bigger, and actually this part goes for the older, seems like it goes down. So from here we could say we see that for younger are more likely to achieve the target of a good season. Here we also plot it including this group that then we exclude in the main analysis, the very young one. And actually from here what we can say is that maybe it's interesting that it's actually non-linear. So if it were just a pure biological mechanism that the younger I am, the more I can control my fertility, then we would expect like a linear one. So these at least these are just raw data still, but we interpreted that maybe at least does not go against there being a choice behind this. Okay, and then so let's remember that in our main analysis for now this group we just drop it and we put these two groups together. So this will be the type young, and this will be the type older mother.
Plotted that against being a single mother.
This is overall. Then in the regressions, we control for being legally married or not. That's what we have in the birth certificate. Are you married or not? And this we control for it. This is just very raw, the difference in it. Yes?
Any differences across cohorts? Like if you look at this for an older cohort, were these effects there already, like 50 years ago? Or?
Okay, so you mean to go back a long time ago. Now this, we can clearly do that. That's a good point. Basically, to reinforce this issue of choice, or maybe we should see it, especially for the old ones, that it was even more Yes, that's a good point. Yes, it is. Yes.
Just in terms of whether it's biological or not, at 2024 there is high rate of unwanted pregnancies. So that may actually reduce the proportion of those who actually plan a good season because you're mixing a lot of unplanned pregnancy with it. So you could still have a biological phenomenon, just that your very young sample has both people who plan it for a good season and a bunch of unplanned pregnancy where it's pretty random.
Okay, thank you. Yes, no, that's true. Yes, although let's say here at least we avoid the teen pregnancies. But no, still, or maybe these are clearly the less educated who have their in the US, their first child between 20 and 34. So there is also this issue that clearly is selected on negative selective on education. But yeah, fair enough. At least we can be more careful about that. But this is basically raw. This is just for illustration. Since then we don't. We keep the twins separate just to see the proportion of twins over the mother's age by education groups. So here we have just two groups, and this is the proportion. This is just for the last 2 years of mothers reporting on the birth certificate that there was usage of these assisted reproductive technologies. This is just to have an idea. Then if we go back to our plots, again, raw data, now we consider birth weight, so one of the birth quality outcome, the main one, and we just see if there is also a difference in terms of this younger and older group, and then by good and bad season, okay? So these are the younger mothers and the older mothers, always the first birth. So here we see that, as this has been reported already in the literature, there seems like a good season gives an advantage here in terms of birth weight. These are just raw data for all that there is, but is smaller. This is the same if we split by these two education groups. So clearly here the higher birth weight is for those who are young and have some college. These are live births.
Since we are looking at quality of birth, there is nothing from the medical literature that says are more likely to have preterm babies in the very hot season or anything like that?
Actually, this we can check. I think the paper by Janet Curry and Schwanz actually hints to the fact that it's more likely that there are preterm if you go through the winter in your last term of a pregnancy, and maybe she actually they actually give this explanation as the fact that those born in the first quarter they have so bad outcomes. But you're right, this we can check. However, here let's remember that then these are just raw data, but when we go into more regressions, we have weeks of gestation. So we know for each birth the weeks of gestation. Yes.
That's also, if it's known to the mother, that could be a very good reason, right, to change the season where you want your birth. If I have a very high risk of preterm or much higher risk of preterm, has an impact on this outcome, has an impact also on the choice of the mother.
Okay. Yes, this we can check. But in any case, then at some point we use the information on gestation weeks. So you would basically like to have a plot of gestation weeks by in the 4 quarters, basically.
Just to know if it's true. I mean, if it's a
Yeah.
big impact or not.
Okay, I would say that clearly it's reported more for winter. Here we are talking about the US. So if we go to countries where the heat is so high, but no, because that's clearly there are differences. But okay. So now let's start with very simple regressions. So here it's basically a linear probability model. So the dependent variable is a good season versus bad season. So good season in quarter 2 and 3. And we just check correlates with respect to the mother's characteristics that we have. So the difference across columns is just in the controls we put. So moving from first and second column is just whether we had EAR fixed effect or not, and these are robust standard errors. So here what we can see is that moving across columns, so the effect of age, so of being a younger mother basically stays the same regardless of whether we control or not for other characteristics of hers. In particular, then when we add this dummy for education, we see that these two as an impact, and also being legally married. So this would be being legally married, so it's correlated with a slightly higher chance of hitting the good season. Smoking during pregnancy, which we could say is one of the worst things that nowadays you can do while you are pregnant, clearly has, here as a negative.
How do you know that?
What?
How do you know the administrative data with this? They collect that data in administrative sources?
This is in the birth certificates, not for 100%, but in recent years, I think it must be around 30 or 32 states of the US, let's say more or less evenly distributed. Yes, they report whether the mother was smoking during pregnancy. Actually, yeah, and some states even report if it was the first trimester or not. Here we just check whether it is or not. So it's not for 100% of the observations, but I think it's more or less 78% of the observations. So whether it's smoked during pregnancy, there is a negative significant association, and it's basically, in terms of size, more or less the same size as being at some college. Being legally married, here is versus anything else, because they just ask, are you married or not? It's here apparently there is a positive.
You know the state of birth?
Okay, that's an interesting point. So if you use earlier data, we would have the state already given. Here, for this more recent data, we need to ask for it, so we don't have it yet.
You could use now. Maybe in Florida, this thing doesn't matter.
No, clearly. So yeah. So this is basically we needed to get this data. The only answer we can give now is that it's interesting that when we do it for Spain, that is basically a completely different country, for example, the age, then we will see we get exactly the same. Yes.
Is, again, related with respect to the states. So how does this good season maps into how old your kid will be at the first grade? Because parents care about that, whether your kid will be oldest or the youngest in the class. Like think of Spain, no? If your kid is born in January or February, he or she will be the oldest.
Yeah, the oldest, exactly. So I would say
maybe there are some state variations in that you can exploit as a mechanism.
No, that's a good point. So we can check back. I think the quick check we made was that in the US it seems like they go more toward this system of the solar year. Because, for example, in the UK it's very different. So some papers that use whether the month of birth affects education in the UK, instead they have a very different rule that what matters is your age at September 1st. Exactly. But in the US, I would say I didn't see any flag at least.
But state have differences that you can exploit. That's what I was thinking.
No, exactly. Yeah, that state for sure we need to get. Yes.
So I can confirm. That's very important. With our 4 kids, we time it just to have it in September 30 actually is relevant for you because in many
No, but this
states-
is first birth. So if you talk about your fourth kid, I'm sorry. It's
September in some states is September 30th, so it's really the
okay,
last thing
okay.
that you want.
okay.
And some people like me have learned that that's very important. So
No. Okay.
North Carolina, it's 1st of October.
1st of October.
Okay. No, fair enough. So, okay, no, that's
it's
clearly
right in your mind.
important. Okay, these are first births, but clearly, yeah, this state is pivotal. It's just that, I mean, this is really work in progress, and for these years, we need to ask for, what we could do in the meantime is show it for 10 years before, where we have the state, and then see that if there is any difference.
It
Yeah.
looks like it has something to do with the mother's job, right? Because college comes in with a plus. I would figure that people are less likely to smoke that are in like higher level jobs where pregnancy is disrupted. And I would think in the summer's kind of like a vacation time. And
No, exactly. So these, the education part could capture this job flexibility issue. Exactly. That maybe, you target, you achieve good season because you are really concerned about. Yes.
So I was going to say, just from my experience, there's never been a public school teacher that had a kid in the summer.
Yeah.
They always have them in the year because that's the maximum time they get off.
Okay. Yeah, so, okay, but this is more evidence in terms of choice. So there is clearly a choice. Because here, it was surprising when we started working on it that apparently there is no analysis on the choice of season of birth. And instead, exactly, so we're not saying we are done, we're just starting, but it seems like it's clearly a choice. Exactly. Thank you for all these comments. So basically, okay. Then what we do, this is more or less, so this is the benchmark that we showed before, then we just split in subsamples between the non-smokers during pregnancy and the smokers during pregnancy, and then just for the recent year, those who write, so it's written that there was assisted reproductive technology used for that pregnancy or not. And here, the possibly interesting thing is that when we split by was the mother smoking or not during pregnancy, we see that all the action is basically from those who were not smoking, okay? And here, interestingly also, if we believe this too is not available for all the observations, but for the ones we have, it seems, again, all the action, it seems like is here. Although this we could say is lack of power, so more or less this is similar, but clearly like this age association, we see it's all coming from those who say no. So these two, still it's very raw, but it could hint to the fact that there is a choice behind. Maybe like if you are undergoing assisted reproductive technology, you basically cannot choose. It's the doctor that tells you, okay, come in next month. Now we are overbooked, come in a year. So this at least is raw evidence of it. And these two, maybe like if nowadays you are smoking during your pregnancy, maybe you're just maybe either not planning or not caring. So you may not even care or manage to shoot for any good season. Here what we do, we are interacting education and age. Here this is, we still have, to go through this. Here what it's just another change. We changed the category, just considering younger until 34. So we moved the 35 to 31 to the old category. And interestingly here, when we do that, we actually find that the association of age, of being younger with a good season is actually lower than before, which suggested to us also that maybe for now we will stick to younger group going till 30, 39. So this is basically an illustration of what we observe. Now we think if we are after, or we think that there is a choice behind the season of birth, we think that it is relevant to think that one thing is what you shoot for, and one thing is what is actually realized. So not only to say, okay, let's see in the birth certificate in which season this child was born, but actually to try to distinguish between expected and realized one. Because you may shoot for a given season, but if, for example, is preterm or enough preterm, you may end up in the wrong season with respect to your plans. So given that, and this is we were happy with it, that basically there are gestation weeks, this information for virtually all the observations, we can actually construct, so for the 4 combinations that there are. So not only good season and bad season, but it can be that it's planned good and then it realized good. It can be that it's planned bad and this realized good. It can be that it's planned good and realized bad, or bad. So basically now what we do is basically we try to work with the 4 of them, because what we also wanted to understand, and this maybe goes back to some of comments before, for example, these differences that we observe between these different correlations between young and old, are they just due, for instance, to the fact that maybe all the old ones are premature, and then that's why we observe a difference. So also looking at this could matter to start understanding what's going on. So here what we do is basically, so we work with these 4 categories. Now we have 3, the reference one is good. This is basically one regression. So although it's in 3 columns, just to show you the outcomes, is basically one regression is multinomial geology with these categories. And so basically here, what do we see? Let's remember that the reference category is good. So although we can think that the other characteristics like education, married, smoking during pregnancy, more or less, they don't vary across these groups. So here the interesting thing is that when we consider like being a younger mother, whether it makes it more likely to achieve a good, we see here that the bigger difference is with the category bad. If instead actually we compare the good with due in bad, the born in good, here we basically have no relevance of how young, or whether the mother is of the young type. And if we compare good to due in good but born in bad, we have some relevance, but it's much smaller than, for example, the other category, the other difference of what we had seen before. So here we think, what we see here is that maybe, so it's not just that the older maybe go preterm or not, but here the key issue seems to be the expected one. Now we see here, maybe here we see it better. So what we do here is basically trying to compute the probabilities of realized and of the expected season separately for the younger type of mother and the older type of mother. Okay, and here, so this is the young, and then we have another 3 for the old, just to see if we can think that there is it seems like there is a choice, or if everything is driven, for example, by preterm. So here we just have this, the probability, and when we go back and see the expected, so we see that here for the young there seems like to be a difference also in the expected one. So not only for young, like for the realized, what we saw at the beginning when we just have a good and bad, but when we basically look at the realized and expected, we observe that there is some difference. The interesting thing is that when we do the same thing, so the same tree now for the older type of mother, and here it is interesting to see that for the older type of mother, when we look at the expected, here basically there is nothing. So it seems like at least this difference in terms of being the younger or older type of mother is not due to just that older women go preterm, but it seems like here at the stage on which of planning, here basically it's more random for the older mothers. Maybe it's just exactly that they cannot control their fertility any longer, or they have, or they just don't care. I mean, so far we don't know, but it seems like that with respect to when we move old and young, at least we can say that the observed pattern in terms of old is not due to preterm, just overwhelmingly preterm births.
Sonia,
yes.
Do you have information on the distribution of time that it takes to get pregnant for people who are actively trying? because I don't think, I think I've looked at this, and the distribution is a little bit wide in the sense that when you start trying, it may take on average about, 3 months or 4. So how that factors into the target season, that is the target thinking, do people know that it's going to take them 4 months on average to conceive, or?
And you're saying that basically this time is clearly different for younger and for older. Okay. No, that's a good point. This we can check. So I'm sure it's documented. Yeah, exactly. So at least in the medical literature, we should be able to. And then maybe think if there is understanding between younger and older. Okay. Yes. Okay. So basically, this was in terms of correlates in terms of mother's characteristics and season. So shooting for the good season, actually having the 4 categories. Now, what we look at is basically birth quality and season, and then now we just show all like the birth quality variables we have, and then we will just focus on birth weight. So this is just regressions in which we basically have, so the dependent variable is quality of birth weight, low birth weight, gestation weeks, prematurity, and so on. And here we control for the mother's characteristics that we have. And in addition to those, we control for bad season. So here we go back momentarily. Now we go back just to the 2 categories. Either it's good or it's bad. And then we will look at the 4 of them. So here, the only thing we can say, because clearly if this is a decision, it's affected by this, we can say that even when, we clearly see that season of birth has a negative effect on quality at birth. So this is not new. This is what basically is documented in the literature. We also see that basically when we control for all them, age seems to be also the one, being of the younger type, that basically has the strongest effect, apart from whether you're smoking during pregnancy or not. And we could say it in another way, that season of birth, so whether it is bad season, seems to have a significant association also when you are controlling for the characteristics of the mother. Here we just do the same exercise as before. Now we just focus on birth weight, so this birth quality. And instead of looking at overall, we split by smoking and non-smoking mothers during pregnancy and whether there is assisted reproductive technology or not. And here as well, when we consider bad season, we see that here all the action seems to be on those who do not smoke during pregnancy. And here, for assisted reproductive technologies, we find we find here a significant, although this could be also like the yes, lack of power. Here too we see that this the association in terms of younger mother, this is it is always there. Here now we basically stick to this birth quality, so the outcome, and we work with this. So basically all the possible, so the 4 categories, and the reference one is always good. So here we control, so we have birth weight as dependent variable, and so mother's characteristics, and then we have the 3, bad, good, bad, and bad, good. So reference category is good. And here what we do, so the difference between within these pairs of columns is that in the first column of the pair, we do not control for gestation weeks. In the second one, we put gestation weeks fixed effects. This is for all women. Then we do the same, only considering young, and then considering old. So when we do that, what do we see? So it is actually interesting to see that if we do not control for gestation weeks, we would find that with respect to the reference category, that is, it was planned in the good and it happened in the good, basically all those would show a negative association with birth weight, negative significant. The interesting thing is that when we control for gestation weeks fixed effects, basically this association is washed away. So if it is due in good, if we are controlling for gestation weeks, then the fact that if it was doing good, the fact that then it happens early in bed, if we are controlling for gestation weeks, it does not have any association to birth
also
weight.
because probably it's not too bad, no? Because the season is pretty close to the good season.
Yeah, but we could say the same also for the other one. They are always, so there is 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 is close to 1. These two are bad, and 2 and 3. So in a sense, this we could say it also for the other one. Here, the difference seems to be because, so basically, when we control for gestation weeks, this is washed away completely, but instead these other two associations are not. So it could be that basically what is the difference between these two categories and these? The difference is that both of those bear the due in bed. So it seems like, but this is still very preliminary, that here, once we control for gestation weeks, so for the fact that you could be born premature, it seems like what matters is if you are planned in bed, or at least if you are not planned for a good.
So high quality mothers, let's call it like that, are putting all this effort in planning, but it's useless.
No, I would not be so extreme, because maybe then we could go back and see with these 4 categories. No, probably it's also more likely that they hit it right. But here at least, no, okay. Here at least we have a situation.
Yes, it's all selection.
It's all selection.
Pardon me?
It's all selection.
Because if you're accidentally born in good.
No, exactly. So here what it seems, it's whether it's due bad or not, exactly. But if it is selection, then it's clearly selection, yeah, on mothers, I guess you mean on mothers' characteristics, yes. So here, at least with this exercise of instead of working just with 2, the realized one, we also go back to the expected ones, we actually see this. So basically, the only one which is washed out is this one. So if you were planned for the good, here, yes, that's what you said. Maybe you were preterm in this case, but it seems like if you were planned for the good, that's fine.
The other thing is that probably is the period while you are pregnant that is important. Not because all these people, they all shoot for the good, so they are pregnant in the right season, both of them.
Even if
they deliver a little bit earlier.
So like if it's the first 3 months that matter, not the last 3 months.
Yeah, exactly, something like that.
Yes, this we could check because actually, yes. So that's a good point. So these 2, we should go back to the medical literature and check it carefully. Here it's, I mean, from what at least our reading of this Curry and Schwant paper, there is a lot of emphasis, for example, the fact that those born in the first quarter have so bad outcomes is due that they are preterm. So they should have been born later, but due to winter germs, influenza, they are just born, instead of being born in the spring, so they are born earlier and preterm. So, but fair enough, that's an important, yes?
One thing to look at on that
Yeah.
is that there's a lot more air pollution in summer, and air pollution matters more in the first trimester. So that's one mechanism that could be if you're trying to avoid the heavy pollution period.
Okay, these 2, that's very good. So this way we would need to be very, very careful. Yes, but then we should. Pardon me?
And you want to control for our
Yes, I'm not sure whether we can do that, but okay. So basically, so here, yes. So the interesting thing is that only this is washed out. Instead, it seems like if it is due in bed, exactly what clearly matters is due bed. When we move to just looking the young, yes.
There is still something, this -3, which is nothing.
This?
Yes, this one. You would expect something very negative here in principle, because those are premature babies.
Yeah, but I'm controlling for gestation fixed effects. Yeah, so if they are not, actually, you're right. This is 225 grams. That's exactly. So here, if I'm not to control, exactly. So here, the column 1 is basically I don't take into account that they are premature, and I just check basically the associations of these. So yes, you're right. So yeah, here I am controlling for gestation weeks to fix the effects.
So essentially here you have two regressors. One is the date of conception and the other one is the date of birth. So we're talking about kids who were conceived, I don't know, that should have been born in April.
April, exactly.
Born in February.
Yes.
You control for the fact that they were conceived in April, and you control for the fact that they're born conditional on being conceived in April. The fact that they're born in February should imply a much lower birth rate.
Yeah, if I'm not controlling, but if I am controlling for how premature they are, then this should not.
I would think the contrary.
No, because I mean.
Something. So this kid is, if I just regress on the fact that the kid is born in April, I should see nothing. But if I
No, but so sorry, but here this does not control only for the fact that he's born in April. So this dummy is he was born in April. No, sorry, he was planned for April, but he was born in February. Okay. So yeah, these are like the three. Yes, so this is doing good, but it happened in bad. So basically, yeah, so here is basically without controlling, and instead when we control for gestation weeks. So here it seems like exactly if there is something bad still, is coming, is coming from due in bad, so from when it was expected, okay. So then, just in the last 5 minutes, let's just look briefly at Spain. So here we just redo the same type of exercise. We don't necessarily have exactly the same variables, but more or less, yes. So again, here we don't know if it's, I mean, for now we just keep the same definition: good season in spring and summer. So here for again singletons, this is Spain. Just for this is the latest 2 years. Well, the only difference here is that we would observe that this difference between younger and older is not due to the younger shooting better for the good, but actually to the older messing it up more. This is basically the same regression. The interesting thing here when we look at Spain is, first of all, that this correlate of a younger type of mother is exactly the same. So here we are talking about a very different country, so Spain and the US. And being a younger mother, again, these two is a first birth, being the younger type of mother basically has the same association with good season in Spain as in the US. It is also interesting to note that instead the association with the Sun College, with being more educated, goes completely away. Here we are thinking, but this is just clearly education, that maybe let's remember that Spain has a completely different setup in terms of maternity leave and so on. So here it could not be so stringent to try to shoot for summer, otherwise I will have trouble in my job. If here everybody has it's much easier to have maternity leave than in the US. Even here, white collar job, we don't find anything. Then the same regression, so now birth quality across all, and here too, bad season, controlling for bad season has more or less the same impact, although we are controlling for mother's characteristics. And here too, we redo the same exercise with these trees between realized and expected season. So here, that's basically what we see is that for these younger mothers, it seems like there is not much going on in terms of expected season when we look at young. And instead, when we look at old, it seems like here it's, the bad season is more prevalent. And then we redo the same type of analysis here too. So dependent variable birth weight, having the 4 categories, good is the reference one. And here too, the interesting thing would be that it's always this one that gets washed away when we are controlling for gestation weeks. So here too, again, a different country. The one that is washed away is this one. And instead here, we find maybe less significance, but we still have a more or less also similar magnitudes that what seems to matter if there is a negative association is the due in bad. And then we distinguish for the young and the old. So basically, that's it. So what we are trying to get to, but we still have a lot of work, is basically to try to estimate some value of season of birth. So payoff of going for the good season, and then trade-offs between good season and postponing fertility. Just to show you very quickly, We also did it for second births, although we don't want to go there, we stick with first births, because with second births there would be also the additional decision of spacing. I mean, it's already complicated here, but just to show you that although it's true, if we just look at the averages, the second births, it seems like they shoot a bit more for the good season. However, if we consider the correlates in terms of mother's characteristics, there is not any difference. We're done, sorry. Okay, then that's fine. We have twins and we do not find anything, sorry. Thanks a lot. Thank you for your comments.